Welcome to the new episode of r/Askreddit. What's the worst piece of tech you've ever owned? It's a tie between every printer I've ever owned. Ever had a brother BMW laser? Yeah, I would have said the same thing too until I got my brother black and white printer or scanner. I have a small business and I need a printer that just works, and it does. Plus I never realized how little I actually need to print in color. HP printer. Just plain dystopian. Mandatory online account and internet connection to scan a paper when the printer is connected via a cable. Drives me mad. The print head in our HP printer is giving an error which is bricking the entire thing, including the scanner. I had an error that couldn't be fixed, no matter what I tried. Diagnostics said everything was okay. HP support pages didn't mention it, but I simply couldn't print anything. The solution was to buy an Epson printer. About 15 years ago I was given a catalog from my boss so that I could pick out my 5-year employment milestone award. It was pages of stuff ranging from DVD players to luggage. Anyway, I see this pair of binoculars that has a built-in digital camera. How cool would that be to sight an eagle or pretty blue bat through the binoculars and conveniently snap a photo of it? I get the binoculars shipped to my home and eagerly try it out in the backyard. It didn't take me more than 5 minutes to realize that yes, the binoculars have a built-in digital camera, but it has nothing to do with the binoculars other than being part of the assembly. It was a laughably camera and equally pair of binoculars that were not at all integrated. I could have just bought a camera and duct taped it to some binoculars. LMAO. I had a similar experience with a 5-year employment gift catalog. I looked through this thing and there was a handful of decent stuff, just absolutely nothing that I needed. Finally I decided to get a laser leveler that can be mounted to a tripod and provides both vertical and horizontal lines. It somehow manages to drain the batteries even when the physical switch is in the off position, despite the fact that it's literally just a simple light on off device. I don't understand how it could be doing anything more than just opening the circuit and disconnecting the batteries completely. It's also a piece of in general, and I ended up buying a fancy Bosch one instead. Did it come with a case that accidentally turned it on when you put it away? That's how I managed to waste like 24 AA batteries with a Game Gear as a kid. A smart toaster. It was smart enough to burn it. Off-brand bread detected. Please remove and insert a smart toaster at brand bread and drink a verification can. Mountain Dew is for me and you. Printers, printers, printers. Even the best printers I've ever had have only worked acceptably. Brother printers have become the best of the worst recently. That's what I currently have. It's fine. That's all I can say. I had a brother color laser a few years back that I thought would be my final almost BIFL printer. Spent some real money on it and it just fell to pieces. I was so unhappy. Those dumb robotic toys that require a smartphone app to use that is never updated, or the company goes under, and now you have a hunk of plastic. And someone buys it for your kid before they own a phone, so now they beg for your phone on the regular. Someone got my young kids a card game that you could only play with a smartphone. It's like, bro, you had one job. Printers. And that awful case management program that needed a network share to which all users had read or write access, and which held all the private client information and repeatedly crashed. Mainly printers, though. I like that the top 3 answers are all printers. LMAO. I've gotta show this to my wife because I'm always battling with our printer and she thinks I'm technology inept. I've got everything else around here working fine. Amazon Fire Kids. What a complete piece of unintuitive, non-customizable, terrible UI garbage that thing was. I mean, there's many reasons why they are so cheap. My Amazon Fire TV is also a piece of I don't understand why the Fire TV UI is so horrendous. Apple TV is pretty clean and easy to use. Roku TV is absolutely incredible. Pick what apps you want and where you want them, and if it's a smart TV that runs on Roku TV, then gaming consoles and even cable if you still have it get their own little customizable app buttons too. Fire TV is just absolute nonsense by comparison, and I shouldn't have to search for an app I use literally every day. The original Furby. I wanted it so bad, like every other kid the Christmas they came out. I tried to teach it phrases and everything. Anyways, it would wake me up in the middle of the night just talking in its own I tried putting a blanket out it, putting in my closet, etc. but it wouldn't stop. I finally opened it up and took the batteries out, and my parents were so mad that it was all such a waste. When those came out, my brother and sister each got one. I had no interest in them, but they had their fun. My brother and I slept in the same room in bunk beds. My brother didn't use the ladder to climb to the top. He would instead use a desk that was beside our bed to climb up and get down. One night he decided to leave his Furby on the desk, which was right beside my head. I hear him getting out of bed because he needs to use the bathroom. Then I hear Furby waking up. The simple act of my brother getting up and stepping down onto the desk, which I assume caused the desk to bow ever so slightly, caused the Furby to wake up. The next 10 minutes were filled with unintelligible noises, fake snoring. It would pretend to sleep if you didn't pay it any attention, and the occasional play with me being spoken in various cadences. I could not sleep for at least half an hour after it turned off. About a month later, the batteries started going dead in it, which lead to what I can only describe as demonic dubstep sounds. Whenever it turned on, it got buried in the closet not long after that. Lol, I never had a Furby, but I heard they get all up and demented when the batteries are low. A company from the 90s called Independent Personal Computers, IPC. I begged my parents not to get it and go with a more recognizable brand. We owned it for 4 years, and the only games that worked on it well were on sale long before the computer existed. Poorly built, shortchanged at every possible step, not to mention the overheating. A few years down the road, I have a part-time job at a place where I have to dismantle old computers, remove everything from the tower, see what all is usable or can be used for resale, sound cards, video cards, other special cards added on, etc. I come across an IPC that I have to dismantle. The internals of the computer are a war crime. It typically took me 30 to 45 minutes to completely dismantle, label, and paperwork a computer. An IPC took triple the time because of how poorly they were set up and how they were built. Where most of your components in a computer tower are screwed in with a standard Phillips head screwdriver to hold them in place, motherboard, CD or DVD ROM drives, added cards, power box, etc. An IPC also comes with 6 giant, typically melted by the time you're done with the computer, bolts that have to figure out how to take off so you can get all the pieces out. I later talked to a friend who also does a lot of work with computers and asked him if he ever dealt with IPCs. The look on his face told me he had been through some with those computers as well. In 2015 or 16, I bought a heads-up display for my car. You place your phone on it with their app, and it should give you metrics. Absolute waste of money. It was hard to see, had ads, slid around, couldn't see if you weren't sitting at the right angle. What a waste of money. Not me, but my mom bought EMP blockers for her and her husband's vehicles. I told her that they're snake oil, but she bought them anyway for the low price of 200 something each, and she bought 3. Lol, ads on a heads-up display for driving? That's stupid and dangerous. And yeah, those EMP blockers are completely pointless if they even actually contain any circuitry. I had an Outlier, and I paid actual money for it. This is what I came looking for. I bought the other one they sold. Also, their message boards moderated by the people who made it generally responded to legit pleas for help with you for not being able to figure out this subpar glitchy backdoor Android thing. Are Android all Linux fanboys who provide a 4-step guide, and step 2 is always and root your device or compile the kernel, which is a whole other 20-step guide, which won't work if yours has a slightly different manufacturer's number on it. In the 90s or zeros I bought an HP scanner. Once you connected it via USB, the scanner light was on, always. They finally released a software patch, which was a memory resident program that ran on your PC to keep the scanner light off. It was the most asinine thing I'd ever seen, and soured me on HP forever. A scanner lightly. Legit props for this pun. It took weeks to get Madden 97 to work on our Windows 95 computer. I remember playing it once, then it never loaded up again. NHL 97, I recall, was also super finicky. Worked on my friend's computer every time, and my nearly identical machine my family had almost always froze when trying to play it. EA Sports, it's not in the game. Does Windows Me count as tech? Ah yes. Windows Malfunctioning Edition. Mistake Edition. An Android tablet from the now defunct Borders bookstore. I bought a cheap one from Best Buy, and the user interface was like molasses. I might have had the same one. I didn't see the point. Even if you got it, just to give to your kids for entertainment, it couldn't load a full video. It would stop every minute or so regardless of Wi-Fi. BlackBerry Storm. I came here to say this exact thing. What a piece of trash phone that constantly cut out and muted you randomly during a call. I'm still bitter about that dumb phone. I worked for Verizon during this release. The new movie BlackBerry actually does a fantastic job at depicting their rationale as to why they came out with that abomination. Volkswagen ID4. Easily the most frustrating, unreliable, dangerous piece of tech or software I've ever owned. Whoever designed their software should be banged from ever turning on a device with a microchip. ETA. I've owned 9 Volkswagens in the last 20 years. This will be our last one. The entire experience has been a nightmare. The entire system shuts down without warning. Nav freezes, calls drop, backup cam goes out, phones don't connect, and good luck using Android Auto. On a related note, anyone want to buy a 21 Pro S with 26k miles? As a current owner I would have to agree. Those Germans know how to build a solid car, but have the equivalent of a software dev team that learned everything they know by building their own GeoCities sites. Hey now, if you need someone to program a way to cheat emissions testing, they're the ones to call. Well, they got caught, so I would argue they didn't even do that well. 32GB HP laptops for my kids. Updating Windows was a friggin' nightmare. External drive needed, would work about 1/6 times. Wow, I've seen Chromebooks ship that low, but Windows? I'd be replacing that with Mint and telling my kids it's a learning experience. They're basically the exact same hardware as Chromebooks. IRC, the Windows licenses on those machines cost nothing for the OEM, but YMS even allows their OS to be licensed for such horrible machines. I'm not sure. My fridge with a TV, the touchscreen freezes when hot. Samsung. I look back and think, why did I think having a TV on the fridge was smart? I just leave it off now. I refuse to buy smart appliances. My fridge needs to make things cold. My oven needs to make things hot. My dishwasher needs to make things clean. That's about it. They don't need any additional features, it just means more cost to buy and more that can break and need fixing. I have a Canon printer. I hate it more than I thought possible. Nothing about it is intuitive. The drivers are impossible to download. The manuals and instructions seem to have been written by AI in another language and then translated into English, also by AI, but not the same AI. And sometimes it just changes its own IP address for squeals and gigs, and then it's a treasure hunt to figure it out. It won't scan to my Mac, so I've resigned myself to the fact I must always scan to a USB as an intermediate step. I'd go Office Space on it with a bat, but I don't have a bat. Your printer, mine, all printers. And the people who make them, you time stealing pollution making planned obsolescence cunts. Engage. People mocked me because I answered calls with a freaking taco in my ear. Also a portrait screen that hindered games. My favorite thing about the Engage is that you need one if you want to play every Elder Scrolls game, since it had a TES exclusive. And last I knew, Engage emulation was okay at best. Imagine going through the trouble of setting up an Engage emulator, and your reward was getting to play Shadowkey. Every HP device I've ever owned has been the worst device I've ever owned. Interesting. I've owned a couple of HP laptops, a Spectre and an NV, which were excellent. I've had a few HP laptops, only laptops I've ever actually owned, and they're fine. My only gripe about them is with my current one, an NV 2-in-1. One of the hinges snapped behind the display and is popping it out of the housing in the corner where that hinges. Wi-Fi extenders. TP-Link products are very good. I got a few TLWA 855RE extenders years ago, cheap, unobtrusive, and they are still cranking away. Even the one installed in my garage. It hosts an Alexa, Genie opener, Wizcam, 3D printer, car charger, and my phone when I'm out there. Good features, good UI. Plus one to TP-Link. We've been using one for years, and the only issues we have is needing to power cycle it once in a rare blue moon. Kindle Fire. Very slow regardless of Wi-Fi connection. My niece's first tablet was the Kindle Fire tablet. It was an Android tablet with a custom interface that was ugly and annoying to meddle through to find the app you wanted. It didn't even have the regular Android market, so we had to sideload apps and sideload a different app store for it. And it didn't run well either. My mother-in-law bought our daughter one for Christmas a few years ago. After dealing with the POS user interface and slow buggy performance, I just bought her an iPad a few months later. Samsung Smart TV is absolute garbage. Agreed, but if you think those are bad, a friend of mine has a Samsung fridge. It's one of those super smart fridges that has all kinds of features like cameras, touch display, sensors everywhere. The compressor has apparently started to fail. The fridge reports room temperature in both the freezer and fridge sections and says, no errors found. Unit running normally. It's nice to know that your Samsung fridge can tell you if someone's at your front door, play your favorite albums, allow you to surf the web, and even see what's inside without opening the door. But it won't tell you you're going to die from botulism because the unit has turned into an orgy of bacterial growth. Fitbits. I've had two. They never track properly, never connected to my phone properly, Google Pixel, never charge properly, just an overly expensive piece of plastic. Will never buy a smartwatch or fitness watch again. I loved my Fitbits when they worked, but as soon as they started breaking, customer service was absolutely like the worst I've ever dealt with. I'd reach out to them, tell them what was going wrong, what I'd done to try to fix it, even send them the link to their site that showed the fixes I tried. Those would literally send me the same link back and suggest I do things I had told them in the previous message that I had already done. If a message thread went more than a day, they'd just start telling me the same thing over again. At one point, I started walking faster on my treadmill, and my Fitbit started tracking fewer steps. They told me that this was normal. If I'm walking faster, I'm getting more steps in. It'd be for the same amount of time, but these idiots insisted that it was working correctly for it to track fewer steps. I switched to Garmin, and while it doesn't track my sleep as well, it at least hasn't broken and tracks my steps correctly. The end. I had a Fitbit and a Garmin. Similar issues, right? The Fitbit. The Garmin, on the other hand, was a total rockstar, and when it broke, the company was great to work with on a replacement. Definitely recommend. The entertainment system in my 2022 Civic. The worst, most buggy, glitchy, garbage Android Auto experience I have ever had. Constant disconnections, stuttering audio, occasional refusal to pair, told me my phone was incompatible despite it having just been paired, maps glitching out constantly, all on a brand new Pixel 2. Yup, Honda has horrible infotainment systems. I have an Acura, and it's very bad. I love the car overall, but the infotainment system is just crap. A Dell PC. I bought it with a repair contract that promised to replace it in case of a problem. Instead, the tech support guy tried to get me to take it apart and diagnose the hardware problem. I told him to f off, and they never got me a replacement. I will never ever buy a Dell product ever again. I work in tech, and I will say that Dell treats normal consumers way differently than they treat their professional customers. When we had a server issue, we had a Dell technician on site next day, and they had every replacement part they needed on their truck. Motherboard, power supply, RAID controller, whatever it was, they got it done. But their off-the-shelf product support is not so great. A Chinese Windows tablet. After a year it became really slow, and then the battery on it just died, not letting me turn it on. Most Chinese goods really are a matter of you get what you pay for. If a good is half the price of comparable goods, there's usually a reason why, especially considering the licensing costs for the millions of patents in it they can't avoid and are upheld in Chinese courts costs $100 to $150 US minimum. I'll one-up you with SharePoint Online. All the features of SharePoint on-prem with little to none administration ability. Woohoo. Seriously, I'm a SharePoint admin. A SharePoint farm with no admin is a savage dog with no leash or muzzle. Does anyone ever have a positive experience with SharePoint? Yep. Let's line these up. Java. WatchGuard GUI with the manager closely following. Delapta Shaw. Slow. Buddy as GUI. And constantly has issues. Symantec Backup X. You piece of Adobe Reader. Highlights annoy by users with updates every day. Mother printers. All of them. If I need to print something at home, which isn't very often, I just go to a library. Microsoft Surface. I've owned 2, because apparently that's how many times I need to be burned before I'll learn my lesson. I owned them for a combined total of 4 years, and was forced to replace the keyboard around once per year. The first one the hinge snapped internally and cracked the screen from the inside. The second one the screen just flat out died for no reason. The things were riddled with software issues, especially the earlier model. In the end I replaced them with a similar style Huawei tablet, and it's been perfect for 2 years so far. NFTs. Luckily I didn't purchase it as it was handed out as a promotion. But seriously, how stupid. It's just a money laundering tool. MLM for douchebags. Virtual Boy. Yeah. I actually liked my Virtual Boy, but I can't pretend it was a good piece of hardware by any means. At best, it was an idea ahead of its time. It was okay, but the implementation was almost like they wanted it to fail. A VR-like headset you can't strap to your head, displays a single color in a way that causes headaches, and then don't push any games for it? It was like they were told, had to get something out the door, but didn't have the budget to actually make a long-term product, so they half-assed it and just let it die. It's a pity insofar as there were some cool ideas in some of the games, but the system itself wasn't something worth writing home about. I do feel like Nintendo in particular has a long history of creating new hardware and making a couple launch titles, and then hoping magically third-party devs will decide to make good games. Rob. Superscope. It's quite a list. Anything HP. Their products, laptops, desktop, and especially printers. I'm lucky the HP monitors I bought are still going great. I've owned 3 HP laptops, and I might as well have just burned all the money I spent on those heaps of scrap. Why did you continue to buy from that brand after one bad one? It's a toss-up between 2 devices for essentially the same reason, both of which I still own. A Canon camcorder and a Magellan GPS. Both were victims of being obsolete pretty much the moment they were released, both being replaced by smartphones. When I bought them, smartphones were rare and expensive, but after a year or so, everyone had smartphones that could shoot video as good as the camcorder, and they all had Google Maps. Neither product was truly bad, they just didn't really last the lifetime one would expect when buying them. My honorable mention for a current piece of tech that I still own and use goes to my Google Nest doorbell. The battery powered one is terrible. The battery life is about a week, which means every week I need to take it off the wall and plug it in for a few hours to charge. It doesn't like cold weather, and so for a few months of the year, it's in a low power mode that still uses up just as much batter. I'm pretty certain that if someone wanted to, it wouldn't be that difficult to steal. All of these problems however would be fixed if I swapped up to the wired model, but that means running wires. Saying this as a Mac fan, the first generation Intel MacBook Pros, we bought several of them in our office, and I kinda still liked them, as they were blisteringly fast at the time. But their quality was horrendous. They would instantly shut down, thus losing all our work. The batteries had a tendency to bulge, lifting the laptop up off the desk, and so were recalled. Even the replacement batteries would lose their chargeability quickly, so on some of the laptops we had to replace the replacement batteries. The Apple charging cable between the wall and the adapter would stop charging, but could be resolved by replacing with a cheap third-party cable. The other part of the cable between the adapter and the laptop had a tendency to melt or burn through the insulation. Samsung soundbars. I've owned 2, including a top-of-the-line model that costs greater than $1,500. Worked fine for a year and a half. Then both gradually developed issues with the rear satellites losing connection, and the subwoofer in the pricier system making distorted growling noises. No amount of resets and hours on the phone with Samsung tech support could get them to work reliably, so I ended up with big fat expensive paperweights. To top it off, the $3,000 Samsung QLED TV I bought 10 months ago has ridiculously poor black levels despite hours of calibration. In dark scenes, large milky cloudy patches show up, Hugely distracting. Samsung kitchen or laundry appliances have a bad rap, but in my experience its AV products are pretty much junk too. Avoid. The upside is that they also monitor everything you watch and send that info back to the mothership. Yay Samsung. Microsoft Zune. I expected it would be a simple drag and drop device, but they made it so proprietary it was unusable. The magical Zune software days. I actually thought it was well designed, but yeah it was a pain that it couldn't be done through Explorer. Rechargeable batteries. When we had young kids and were going through batteries like mad, we figured it would be great to have ones we could just swap out, recharge and roll on. Tried multiple brands, multiple chargers, etc. and never found any that were reliable. Half the time they didn't charge, when they did they only charged partially, and it seemed like they just died way faster than regular alkaline batteries, which is what we ended up just going back to. Edit. I'm sincerely glad to hear that rechargeable battery tech is improved and/or is working great for many of you. I was just speaking to my own experiences, which were largely 10 to 12 years ago. You ever try in a loop? They are the gold standard for consumer rechargeables. I have had a set for 6+ years now and haven't bought a single disposable in that time. LG Voyager VX10000. It was advertised as an iPhone killer. Then they started calling it a feature phone. The thing was garbage. Sure, texting and gaming on it was nice, but the internet app was just about useless, and there were hardly any apps for it at all. I had the HTC Touch Pro 2, which was a version of that LG Voyager on steroids. It was good for what it was, but Windows Phone OS was not any better than the feature weird OS on the Voyager. Roomba Robot Vacuum. Edit. To be clear, I don't like Roomba S9 Plus specifically. It was my first robot vacuum. It was noisy, knocked everything, couldn't run in pitch darkness, required rescuing every now and then, and towards the end of its life had many navigation problems. My second robot vacuum was Ecovacs T-Bot T9 Plus. It was so much better. Silent, effective, litter based. It could mop in addition to vacuum. Best of all, it was 1/3 the cost of the S9 Plus. But like the Roomba, it frequently required its main rollers to be cleaned of coiled hair. And it also required rescuing once every few months. The app's map required resetting from time to time as well. My current robot vacuum is Roborock Q Revo. Slightly more expensive than the T9 Plus, but still significantly cheaper than the S9 Plus. No navigation issue whatsoever. It mops better than T9 Plus and has dirty water management. This is the best. But back to topic. Roomba S9 Plus was the worst. The head unit in my 2021 Subaru. It is terrible. The hardware might be okay, but the firmware is written by idiots. Examples. If playing music off a flash drive, you can only play songs in alphabetical order by track title. Whoever wants that? Okay, I will play it by Bluetooth off my phone. But half the time it needs to be manually reconnected to my phone. My phone is in its list of recognized devices and says it is connected, but it just refuses to play media from it unless I go through the manual connection procedure again. The tag info is drawn from some bad database of its own. So even when all your tags are all perfect, it will show you its own ones, which have spelling mistakes and sometimes just wrong information. Why? The tag display is wedged in between a place where album art is supposed to show, but never does, and some touch buttons that I never use, and is just truncated. If it does not fit, it does not even scroll, it just puts at the end. Meanwhile, there is tons of dead space that is the full width of the display that is never used. It is the worst thing about my car. Thank you.